hands off that.
What's the matter?
She'd about to lose her mind if she ever thought you laid a finger on it.
For heaven's sakes, Mrs. Harold, you nearly scared me to death.
You'd catch it from her, all right, if she was here.
Well, she's not here, for goodness sakes. She's in Albany.
If she got an idea there was a pin out of place here, she'd take the first train home. Maisie, never forget, this room is the Holy of Holies.
Aunt Ellen, could we have coffee in here tonight? I'm due with Fergus Passmore's for a poker game.
Surely, dear. Please serve the coffee right away, Maisie.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm glad you're playing poker. You haven't had a game in a long while.
That's right, I haven't.
You used to enjoy it so.
Yes, I did. Harriet wasn't so keen on my having every Saturday night booked up. It wasn't important to me one way or the other. I wonder how things are going in Albany. I half expected to hear from Harriet today. Her sister must be about the same.
Poor Lillian, she's had so much illness.
I'm afraid she won't get over it. Harriet will be awfully broken up.
Yes, I imagine so.
Finished, dear?
Yes, and you must be going.
I promised to be there early. Good night, Auntie. I'll be home
Now,
around...
don't say when you'll be home. Stay as long as you're having a good time. And I hope you win all the money.
Good night.
Good night, dear.
Oh, Mrs. Harold.
Yes, Mr. Craig.
Mrs. Harold, I left a number by the phone. I'll be there till midnight in case anyone wants me.
All right, Mr. Craig.
Good night.
Good night.
Good evening, Mr. Craig.
Oh, good evening, Mrs. Fraser. Is the day long enough for you?
I suppose you think I'm out of my mind, but it isn't good to water them till the sun goes down. Poor darlings, they get so thirsty after these long, hot days.
They're certainly worth your trouble. You have the prettiest garden in town.
Oh, thank you. My roses will never take any prizes, but I love them. I'm sorry to hear Mrs. Craig's sister's so ill.
Yes,
I know how you hate having her away.
yes. Yes, the house isn't the same with Harriet away. Well, good night, Mrs. Fraser.
Good night.
Oh, hello, Walter. Glad to see you.
Hello, Fergus.
Come in. Walter, you'll have to excuse me. This is our man's night out.
Well, mixing our own drinks won't kill us. Who's coming?
Yeah, that's what I like to know.
How do you mean?
Well, I asked Jim Reynolds and Morrison and Billy Birkmeyer.
Why?
Wait a minute. What happens? You're the only one who shows up. Doesn't surprise me, though.
Oh, cheer up, old man. It's still early.
Say, will you answer that, Walter?
Sure. Hello. Yes, just a minute.
Wait a minute, is this Walter? Say, listen, I tried to get you at home, but the maid said you left and gave me Fergus's number.
Yes? Mm-hmm. Yes, we're waiting for you.
Say, Walter, do me a favor, will you? I wasn't any too anxious to go over there tonight. Fergus sort of gets me down these days. But I said I'd be there, and I was coming. But here's what's happened. My father just blew into town. Yes, he's sitting here now, rare to go to a show. So, Walter, be a good guy and square me, will you?
All right, Billy. I'll explain to Fergus. Goodbye.
Well, I'm waiting. What's Birkmeyer's alibi?
His father's in town. He's taking him to a show. He said, please ask you to give him a rain check.
It's gonna be a swell poker party. The other two didn't have the decency to make an excuse. Why did he bother to lie? If Birkmeyer doesn't want to come to my house, Why doesn't he say so?
Shut up, Fergus. Billy Birkmeyer said his father came to town unexpectedly. That's the simple truth.
Yeah? What about the other two? I suppose their fathers all arrived on the same train. Why did you bother to show up, Walter? Haven't you got a father?
I showed up for a darn good reason, because I wanted to see you.
Hello, Walter. And goodbye.
Hello, Adelaide.
Sorry, I'm just running off. Goodbye, dear. Be a good boy.
Must you go out tonight, Adelaide? Can't you call it all off and stay home?
For goodness sake, why? You're playing poker.
No, we're not going to play. And you haven't seen Walter in a long time.
No, how did dear Harriet happen to let him off the leash?
Harriet isn't here. She's in Albany.
Oh, she's away. That explains it.
You know, you always like Walter. Won't you call up Emily, or whoever it is, and say you can't go?
Emily, and it is Emily, is meeting me at the theater at 8:30. It's after 8 now. Run on back to your boyfriend, dear. I'm late.
Say, you're doing all right for yourself.
What do you mean I'm doing all right for myself?
Why, I read the other day you'd landed the Dunning typewriter account. The 15% of that ought to mean a lot to your agency.
She could hardly wait to get out. She looks at me as if I weren't there. Walter, you know how much I love her. You're one of our oldest friends. Why should she have contempt for me?
Fergus, you ought to go away and get yourself a rest. Why don't you run up to the Adirondacks for a couple of weeks?
She wouldn't go.
Oh, I didn't mean with Adelaide. I meant by yourself. Or with a couple of old friends.
No. No, I can't go away now.
You're badly snarled up, Fergus. You're coming to conclusions about people and the trivial things they say and do that are, believe me, old man, absolutely cockeyed. What? Adelaide no more has contempt for you than Billy Birkmeyer was lying. Bet I can take your pinochle.
Who do you see? Someone you know? Good-looking woman, that brunette.
Hey, just because you're in New York, you don't have to twine leaves in your hair. I've got to send you home to Mother in a good state of repair.
You are better today, Mother. You look so much better.
I'll be all right. But you look tired, Ethel. Harriet, has this child of mine been staying awake worrying?
If I know you're really better, Mother, I won't lie awake tonight. Are you sure you're better, Mother? Really better?
Of course I am, darling. I suppose I shouldn't have brought you all the way home from college, but I just had to see you.
Oh, Mother.
You're very dignified in your cap and gown. In spite of your dear, silly little nose.
Oh, terribly dignified. Wait till you see me at commencement next month.
Yes. I'll be right back.
Oh, Miss Rigby. Yes, Mrs. Craig.
Miss Lambert was with her mother.
Yes, I know, Mrs. Craig.
My sister was crying when I left the room. I'm afraid all this emotion will set her back.
Well, Mrs. Craig, Dr. Wood felt that since she counted so on seeing her daughter in you, we'd better send for you.
Don't you think she'd make a quicker recovery if she didn't have visitors?
Well, Mrs. Craig, if you'll excuse my saying so, visitors always set patients back.
And I think I'll go home today on the noon train.
But there's Miss Landreth. It's Miss Landreth
I'll take my niece home with me for a good rest. If there's the slightest change, why, Dr. Wood can telephone. I know he'll find a great improvement just as soon as Mrs. Landreth has a chance to rest quietly without these emotional upsets. Ethel, dear, you mustn't. You know your mother's been through the same kind of thing many times before.
But I should be there, Harriet. Supposing something should happen.
Darling, nothing is going to happen.
It seems terrible to me now to have walked away and left Mother in that condition.
But Ethel, dear, you know we were both upsetting her.
There was something I wanted to tell her. I think it would have made her easier in her mind.
Was it something important?
Yes. It was about Gene Fredericks at college. Mother met him last year at commencement and liked him a lot. I wanted to tell her that we're engaged.
Really? Well, when did that happen?
And Gene asked me to marry him just before Easter. Only that wasn't how it was at all, really. We decided we wanted to be together the rest of our lives. We're absolutely sure. Oh, it's wonderful loving someone, isn't it, Harriet?
Your Mr. Fredericks is on the faculty, is that it?
Oh, yes, he's a grand teacher. Everybody says so, not just me. He's an instructor in Romance languages.
And I suppose he's told you he loves you in all of them, huh?
Well, I certainly shouldn't care to think about marriage at all, Harriet, unless we were in love.
Did it ever occur to you, Ethel, that love, as you've described it, this feeling you have for this boy, is a liability in marriage?
Good heavens, Harriet, what a terrible thing to say. You married Uncle Walter because you loved him, didn't you?
Not with any romantic illusions, dear. I saw to it that my marriage was a way toward emancipation for me. I had no private fortune, no special training. So the only road to independence for me was through the man I married. I married to be independent.
Well, you don't mean independent of your husband, too.
Independent of everybody.
I don't understand what you mean.
Well, my home could be destroyed at my husband's will, couldn't it?
Surely. And you could do the same thing to him. But you won't, neither will Uncle Walter.
How do you know that?
Oh, because he adores you. And anyone could see right off he's the most trustworthy man in the world.
Nobody can know another human being well enough to trust him.
You mean you don't trust Uncle Walter?
I don't have to trust him. I know where he is, whom he sees, and what he does. I don't like what he does, why he doesn't do it anymore. It doesn't bother him. He doesn't know.
You don't love him?
Not in the absurd, romantic way you mean, no. I suppose you think me a very sordid woman.
Oh, I don't think anything of the sort.
What do you think?
Well, frankly, Harriet, I don't think it's quite honest.
My dear romantic Ethel. If a woman is the right kind of woman, believe me, it's better that the destiny of her home be in her hands than in her husband's.
My aunt is taking me home with her. Mother better, Ethel.
Well, that's good news, isn't it?
I don't think she said it. 10 words and no information.
Well, call her at her aunt's.
How? I don't know her name or where she lives. It isn't like Ethel not to call me.
Well, her mother must be a lot better. She never would have left Albany.
I know, but just the same, I'd like to talk to her. She's had a bad 3 days. I want to know how she is.
Well, did she ever mention her aunt's name?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Hey, maybe that dizzy roommate of Ethel's will know her name and address.
Hello? Oh, just a minute. Hey, Bonnie! A man's on the phone.
A man?
Smooth voice, too.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello there. Oh, it's you, Mr. Fredericks.
Do you know the name of Ethel's Aunt Harriet?
Oh, wait a minute. I did know if I can only think. It's Craig. What? Oh, Rye, I think. Or is it Larchmont? No, it's Rye. Is anything wrong?
No, nothing. Thanks a million, Bunny. Goodbye.
That's swell. Hey, you're not going to phone her now.
Long distance, please.
Wait. When was that wire sent?
About noon.
Well, she's still on the train, you dope.
Never mind. If something's the matter with Ethel and that aunt of hers isn't telling me.
Oh, thank you, darling.
Well, Mrs. Fraser.
How do you do, Miss Austen? I thought you'd like some of my roses.
Why, how sweet of you. Don't tell me this is that grandson I've heard so much about.
Yes, this is Tim. Say how do you do to Miss Austen. Other hand, darling.
How you do?
The other hand, darling.
How you do?
You do. Oh, Mrs. Harold. Please put these in water. Aren't they beautiful?
Oh, Tim.
Daddy turns his car.
Darling, I wouldn't do that.
Well, do come upstairs to my room.
Come along.
Come along, Tim. Maybe we can find something nice for you up there.
Come on. There we are.
You sent you to work on Willow Avenue, Mrs. Harold?
Yes, I worked out there for Dr. Nicholson for 2 years. I never cared much for them, those Nicholsons. Why?
Did you know anyone out that way by the name of Passmore?
No, why?
Says here they were both found dead this morning in their home on Willow Avenue.
Oh, heaven have mercy on them. What happened to them?
It was burglars, I guess.
Burglars? No, siree. He did it, or one of his high-stepping, loose-living friends.
I thought you said you didn't know them.
I know that Willow Avenue kind, with their cocktails and their meals at all hours and their dirty oil paintings.
Oh, leave them, dear. Maisie will get them.
Maisie? It's her. Put that paper away.
How do you do, Mrs. Craig? I see you're back.
Oh, hello, Mrs. Harold. Ethel, this is my housekeeper, Mrs. Harold.
How do you do?
How do you do, Mrs. Craig?
Oh, Maisie, will you get the bags, please?
Yes, ma'am.
And, Maisie,
Yes, Mrs. Craig?
will you please see that you close the door after you?
Yes, ma'am.
It was half open when we came in. Oh, Mrs. Harold, Miss Landreth will be stopping with us for a week or two. She'll have the corner room. Ethel, dear, why don't you run along upstairs? You must be tired.
Well, I would like to phone Jean, Harriet.
But I sent you a wire, dear. And the most important thing right now for you is to run along upstairs and lie down for an hour. I'll call you for dinner. Oh, Maisie,
Yes, Mrs. Craig.
will you please use the back stairs when you go up and down?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Craig. I keep forgetting.
Not now, Maisie. Kindly show Miss Landreth to the corner room. The staircase will soon look as it did before, with everyone running up and down it every 5 minutes. Will you try to remember that too, Mrs. Harold? Come in. I want to hear how everything has been going.
The cook left last Thursday, Mrs. Craig.
Well, have you been doing the cooking since, Mrs. Harold?
Yes, we've been managing between us. Maisie's a pretty good cook.
Did you call the agency?
Yes, Mrs. Craig. But Mrs. Hewitt wants to see you first.
How extraordinary. Did you tell her that I wanted the usual recommendation?
Well, she says she sent so many. She wants to find out what the matter is before she sends any more.
What?
Well, I'm only telling you what she said, Mrs. Craig.
She ought to have a few of them in her own house. She'd soon know what was the matter. And where did these roses come from, Mrs. Harold?
Why, Mrs. Fraser from next door brought them to Miss Austen.
Take them out of here. The petals will be all over the room.
Where do you want them put?
I don't care so long as they're not in the rooms. I can't be picking up petals every 2 minutes.
Maybe since they were sent to Miss Austen, she might like to have them in her room.
You might ask her. Is Miss Austen at home?
She and Mrs. Fraser are in her room now.
And how did Mrs. Fraser happen to get up there, Mrs. Harold?
I guess Miss Austen asked her. I couldn't say, I'm sure.
All right. Mrs. Harold.
Yes, Mrs. Craig.
There's really no need for messy little scraps of paper on this table. There's a message pad.
Well, I'm sure I'm very sorry, Mrs. Craig. There was so much to do, I left it from last night. Mr. Craig put it there when he went out.
Oh.
He said in case anyone called.
I see. And did anyone call?
Yes, a gentleman named Birkmeyer.
And did you give Mr. Birkmeyer this number all right?
Yes, I did.
Give me information, please.
This is information.
Will you give me the name and address of the person whose number is Levering 3100?
Thank you. One moment, please. This is the supervisor. I have a call for the name and address on Levering 3100 on trunk 2. I'm sorry, we do not give out that information.
Oh. Thank you.
All right. Connect me with the Chief Special Agent's office.
Special Agent's office, Mr. Burton talking. Oh, thank you, Miss McKinley.
Yes, Mr. Burton.
Get me the name and address on Hillside, 7060. Police headquarters? Mr. Cattell, please. Hello, Mr. Cattell. Burton speaking. Are you still interested in information on that number you requested us to put on observation as of 6:30 this morning? Levering 3100? Okay. A request was received at 5:27 for information as to name and address of the subscriber at that number. Yes. Hillside 7060. Listed in the name of Walter Craig. C-R-A-I-G. 39 Benton Road.
Hello, Mrs. Harold.
Good evening, Mr. Craig. Mrs. Craig is home, sir.
She is. Where is she? In her room?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mrs. Harold. Hello, darling. Hello, darling. Darling. Harriet. Well, look who's here.
Hello, dear.
Gosh, darling, it's good to have you home. I had no idea you were back till Mrs. Harold told me. Let's have a look at you. You don't look tired. I was afraid you'd wear yourself out worrying.
Oh, we weren't seriously concerned about Lillian after the first day. Even then, I knew she'd be all right.
Oh, that's fine. She's much better, huh?
Uh-huh.
I'm awfully glad.
Sit in a chair, sweet. You'll be more comfortable.
I'm comfortable here.
No, don't sit on the bed. You'll muss it.
I don't care where I sit as long as I can look at you.
I brought Ethel home with me.
Good. How is she?
Oh, our Ethel is in the throes of love.
Really?
My, yes.
Well, I hope he's a grand person. They get married and live happily ever after. Oh, I'm a great enthusiast for marriage. Why do you suppose?
I have no idea.
Liar.
Darling, will you please be a good boy and go downstairs while I finish unpacking?
Oh, let me stay and watch you.
No. I have to wash and dress and fix my face. The sight all messed
The
up.
loveliest sight I've seen in a whole week. Oh, let me stay, darling. I've only just got you back.
Silly.
Who's silly?
If you're wise, you'll go to your own room and lock the door.
Why?
We have visitors.
Ethel, you mean?
Oh, no. Your aunt is in her room being regaled by our friend, Mrs. Fraser.
Oh, that's fine. What's that got to do with my locking myself up in my room?
Walter, my own darling, you don't want to talk to Mrs. Fraser, do you?
Oh, I don't care particularly one way or another. She's a nice enough person. We've had a couple of chats.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to her last night.
Did you?
Yes, on my way out.
Oh, you went out last night.
Yes, I went over to Fergus Passmore's to play cards. She was watering the garden when I went by.
And when you came back, there she was, watering her garden by moonlight. Mrs. Fraser's roses must be knee-deep in water by now.
What are you driving at?
Well, roses are a newer approach than leading a child by the hand or a dog on a leash.
Oh, Harriet, you're marvelous. You don't think by any chance Mrs. Fraser planted those roses just to lure me to my ruin?
See no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. They combine the three monkeys and call them Walter Craig. Your mind works with a charitable slowness, darling.
But it works very thoroughly when it sees the point. And here's the point about me and Mrs. Fraser, or me and any other woman. I haven't the slightest idea what they look like. Can't see them. I'm too busy being in love with my wife.
That is a very nice speech.
It's no surprise to you, is it? After 2 grand years. Oh, Harriet.
Darling, will you please go downstairs and do not sit on the arms of chairs?
You'll be sorry.
Long distance, please. Get me the residence of Mr. Walter Craig at Rye, New York.
Hello?
I want to talk to Miss Ethel Landreth. Mr. Fredericks.
Ethel is asleep, Mr. Fredericks, and I'd prefer not to call her. Oh, no, she's just tired after the journey, and I'd rather not disturb her. Suppose you give me the message. My dear Mr. Fredericks, I have just explained to you that Ethel is resting and cannot be disturbed.
Operator, long distance. Say, listen, I was talking with Rye, New York, and I was cut off. What? Oh. Well, of all the...
What's the matter?
Listen, Ted, do me a favor, will you?
Sure.
I just left a department meeting, room 10 over in Elliott. Go and tell Domier that whatever he figures out about my exams is okay with me. Tell him I've been called out of town unexpectedly. I'll be back for my 3 o'clock tomorrow.
You're sore.
I don't care. Either Ethel is very ill or that aunt of hers is up to something. I'll see Ethel if I have to tear the place apart.
No, I'm not flattering you at all. I think he's unusually bright for a 2-year-old.
Bless you.
Oh, hello, Walter, dear.
Hello, Aunt Ellen. How do you do, Mrs. Fraser?
Good evening, Mr. Craig.
Well, well, who is this big fellow?
Tim Brooks, my big grandson.
I don't believe it.
It's true, though.
Well, my, but you're a husky fella. How old are you?
2 years old.
2 years old? Say, I like your pretty shirt, Tim. And the pants.
My name isn't Tim.
Your name isn't Tim?
He likes to be called Timothy. I wish I had a house full of them. It's not much fun without them.
What color's your car, Tim?
A red.
A red. Can you drive?
Mummy will think we're lost and send the police after us. Say goodbye, darling.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Tim.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Oh, thank you so much for the flowers.
I'll be back in a minute, Aunt Ellen.
Why, Harriet. I didn't know you were back. Is your sister better?
Yes, I'm back. I think it's about time I came back, don't you?
Why, dear?
Why?
Yes, I don't understand what you mean.
From the looks of things, if I'd stayed away much longer, I should have come home to find my house a public thoroughfare.
Do you happen to be Mrs. Fraser being here?
Exactly. There's just one thing I want to know. How did she succeed in getting in here?
Why, I asked her in, of course. What makes you think she was particularly anxious to get in here?
The same reason that a lot of other women in this neighborhood would like to get in here. To satisfy their curiosity and see what they can see.
Gracious child. Why should you care if people won't see your house?
I don't want a lot of neighbors on visiting terms.
A good neighbor is a very good thing sometimes, Harriet.
But I don't want them running in and out to me.
None of them has ever run in and out to you, as far as I can remember.
One of them has just left.
She wasn't here to see you.
She was in my house.
And in your husband's house.
Well, she was hardly here to see my husband. Or was she?
No. No, she wasn't. Though I've no doubt you tried to interpret her visit that way if you thought you could make Walter believe it. Anything to keep people out of the temple of the Lord. It's a wonder to me you haven't asked us to take off our shoes when we cross the carpet.
You haven't a very good opinion of me, have you?
It isn't an opinion I have, Harriet. It's you I have.
But I don't want Mrs. Fraser here.
Be honest, Harriet.
What do you mean?
You don't want anyone here. You don't want your husband.
What are you talking about?
He's necessary for the upkeep of the house. But if you thought you could manage without him, his position here wouldn't be as secure as the position of that bric-a-brac.
That's a charming thing to say to me.
You want your house, Harriet, and that's all you do want. And that's all you'll have at the finish. People who live to themselves, Harriet, are generally left to themselves.
That's precisely what I've been asking for. To be left alone.
I mean entirely alone. Other people will not go on being made miserable indefinitely. Sacrifices to your worship of house furnishings.
And you've borne it rather successfully?
I did it for Walter's sake. Because I thought someone who loved him should stand by him.
In other words, you've been Walter's bodyguard, saving him from his wife.
But I can't keep it up. I'm leaving here, Harriet. And I'm going to make my reasons clear to Walter.
What reasons are you going to make clear to Walter?
Your aunt is leaving us.
It's nothing very new, Walter.
You don't mean that, Aunt Ellen.
I'm leaving tomorrow, Walter.
But why? What's happened?
She says she finds my conduct of affairs here unendurable.
I'll be grateful, Harriet, if you let me tell Walter the reasons for my going.
Do please sit down and let us hear them.
I'll stand, thank you. I doubt if I'd know how to sit in one of these chairs.
Aunt Ellen, what's this about?
I'm glad you're here, Walter. It's really incredible.
What was it you said, Aunt Ellen, Harriet?
I'll tell you what I did. I objected to Auntie Austin's having brought that woman in here.
You mean Mrs. Fraser?
Yes, I mean Mrs. Fraser.
Oh, Harriet, for heaven's sake, what's the matter with Mrs. Fraser now?
Oh, it's not just Mrs. Fraser, Walter. It's anybody.
Do please tell the truth.
I'm going to tell the truth. At the risk of losing Walter's affection for me.
You'll never lose that, Aunt Ellen.
You're a man, Walter, and you're in love with your wife. I know it's likely to happen to anyone who interferes.
My loving Harriet won't influence me if she's really hurt you.
I'm not pleading my case. I'm pleading yours. Walter, you're in great danger.
I don't know what you mean.
If you did, nobody would need to warn you.
Warn me of what?
Your wife.
What are you laughing at, Harriet?
Harriet's frightened, Walter. She's afraid her secret's out.
And what is my secret?
Suppose you listen while I tell Walter. I've known it for a long time, you see. Almost as soon as Walter's mother found it out.
I've been trying to poison you secretly, darling.
Not so secretly, Harriet.
Have you two completely lost your minds?
No, only one of us, Walter. I'm sorry I can't stay because this promises to be very amusing.
I've asked Harriet to stay here, Walter.
Well, I don't intend to stay.
Why not, Harriet?
Well, Walter, you can do as you like, but I'm far too busy to listen to a lot of absurdities.
Why do you suppose your mother asked you to promise her when she was dying that you'd take me with you when you married?
Why, I think that was natural, Aunt Ellen. After what you'd been to both of us during her illness.
No, Walter. Your mother knew Harriet.
Tom, well, for goodness sake, what are you doing here?
Oh, honey. Oh, I heard they need a mechanic over at Schaefer's garage, so I went over there today.
Did you get the job?
Oh, I don't know. They said they'd think it over. Of course, that's the same old runaround. But I got a kind of a hunch maybe Schaefer meant it.
Oh, Mrs. Harold, this is Tom that I've been telling you about.
How'd you do? Pleased to meet you. Oh, well, look, Maisie, I've got to be going. I just thought I'd drop in as long as I was in this neck of the woods anyway.
Oh, don't go. Stick around and make yourself useful. Here, you can peel potatoes.
Oh, training me for the next war already, eh?
Gee, I hope Schaefer takes you on.
You and me both.
You mean Mother didn't like Harriet?
Nobody could like Harriet, Walter. She doesn't want them to.
I like her.
She's left you practically friendless.
I don't think that's true, Auntie.
Did your friends ever come here?
Why, most of them have been here at one time or another. Yes.
Not for a year and a half, Walter. And you've only been married 2 years.
Well, why shouldn't Harriet want my friends here?
Oh, Walter, can't you see? When you were married, you were one of the most popular men in this town. You never go out now. Nobody ever asks you. They're afraid you might bring her, and they don't want her.
Oh, that's nonsense, Aunt Ellen. Why shouldn't they want Harriet?
Because she's made it perfectly clear that she doesn't want them. She's cut you off, Walter. Isolated you in this precious house.
Auntie, when you think this over, you're going to be awfully sorry you said this about Harriet.
I'm bitterly sorry that I didn't say it sooner.
Exactly what I did.
Well, and who is this?
Oh, this is Tom, Mrs. Craig. Tom McGuire.
I see. Did you engage McGuire to work here, Mrs. Harold?
No, Mrs. Craig.
Oh, no, Mrs. Craig. Tom was just downtown seeing about a job, and he dropped in on his way home.
Did it ever occur to you, Maisie, that I might not like my house used as a refuge for every stray tramp who knocked at the door?
Well, cheer up, lady. I'll be out of your house as quick as I can get out.
Mrs. Craig, you have no call to use words like tramp about Tom. We're going
Shut up, honey. Don't give her any explanation. Like for a centime or for a dime,
Hey, Mrs. Harold, will you see that Maisie is paid in full and leaves immediately?
How do you like that?
I was lunching in town last week when a man you used to know came in with his wife. They didn't see me. The wife proceeded to tell the man how he should have sat down and how to act now that he was down. And finally he said to her, "Say, who do you think you are? Craig's wife?" Now, I can avoid being dictated to in that way. I can leave. You can't. So you must deal with it.
How am I to deal with it?
By impressing your wife with the realization that there's a man of the house as well as a woman and that you're that man. If you don't, before long you'll believe that every friend you ever had was a bad friend and that she rescued you and made a man of you.
Harriet could never turn me against my friends.
Oh, Walter, women like Harriet can make men believe their own mothers are their arch enemies.
Auntie, what'll you do if you leave here?
Travel. All over the world. So I shan't get to be little. Oh, I've had such a deadly fear of that these last 2 years.
I promised Mother you'd always have a home with me.
But you haven't a home to offer me, Walter. You have a house with some very fine furniture in it. I have a feeling when I look at these rooms that they're rooms that have died and are laid out. I'm sorry, Walter.
Hello, Billy.
Walter?
Yeah?
Walter, what happened out there?
What happened out where?
Passmore's. Did she get in before you left? Gosh, what a terrible business. Poor old Fergus.
What are you talking about?
Well, haven't you seen the papers?
No, what happened?
Fergus and his wife are dead.
What?
They found them this morning in the library.
Fergus and Adelaide?
I pretty nearly had heart failure when I read it. I saw her myself at the Ritz around midnight. Did she get home before you left?
No. How could he? Billy, I was with him till midnight. She was home when I got there around 8. She was going out.
Yes, out with that bird I saw her with.
Oh, the poor guy. Poor old Fergus. I know he was in a bad state of mind, but I ought to have stuck around. I shouldn't have left him alone like that.
Well, do you think he did it, killed her and himself?
No question about it.
Well, the police aren't so sure according to that.
Huh? Say, I better let him know I was out there.
Now, wait a minute, Walter. Don't rush into this. If Fergus did it himself, you'd be getting involved for nothing.
He did it all right. Oh, if I'd have known it was as bad as that.
Let's hop in the car and drive out there.
I ought to call the police.
Now, you can do that later if there's any need for it.
Billy, I can't believe it.
Well, I know. I can't get it myself yet.
Walter? Oh, Walter. Walter, where are you? Oh, Mrs. Harold.
Yes, Mrs. Craig.
Where's Mr. Craig?
I couldn't say.
Well, where is he? Did he go out?
I don't know, I'm sure.
Come in, please. I'll tell Mrs. Craig. Mr. Cattell from the police department, Mrs. Craig.
Yes?
The maid told me Mr. Craig was out. When do you expect him back?
Why, I expect him almost any minute. He'll be back for dinner, I know.
Maybe you can clear it up for us.
What is it you want to know?
Well, I'll tell you, Mrs. Craig. I guess you read in the paper about those 2 deaths over on Willow Avenue. Fergus Passmore.
Yes, I did. I was just reading about it. It's dreadful. It was burglary, wasn't it? Have they found anyone?
No, it wasn't robbery. It looks like murder and suicide.
Really? Do they know that definitely?
Not yet. That's why we dropped over to see Mr. Craig.
To see Mr. Craig, but after all...
Well, your husband knew Passmore, didn't he?
Yes, I think so, but I mean, lots of people knew the Passmores.
Well, we're just checking up on one little detail.
What do you mean?
We put Passmore's telephone number, on observation, just as a matter of routine.
Yes?
At 5:30, the telephone company notified us that a call had been made from your phone.
From this phone?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Well, why should anyone...
That's what we'd like to know. Some party calling from here asked information, the name and address of the person whose telephone number was Levering 3100.
Why should anyone want to do that?
I don't know. The name and address were in the papers. The number was in the directory.
I feel quite sure there's been some mistake. I've only just come back from Albany myself,
and you've no idea who made that call?
I know. Seems so strange. Unless one of the servants...
Will you get them, please?
Of course. Hello? Yes? Yes, he's here. Do you want to talk to him? One moment, please.
Hello, Cattell. Davis speaking. We got those pictures from White Plains. Better hurry back and take a look at them.
Okay, I'll be right over. Well, it won't be necessary for you to call in the servants, Mrs. Craig. They have the comparative photos over at headquarters, and they'll most likely clear everything up. If the case should still be open after I've had a look at them, why, well, I'll drop in later when Mr. Craig is home.
Yes, I'll tell him.
I'm sorry to have bothered you. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mr. Cattell.
I feel kind of sorry for him sometimes, though.
It's a pity for him. She could build a nest in his ear and he'd never know it.
She certainly is the hardest woman to please that I ever worked for.
Well, I don't know whether she's hard to please or not, Maisie, because I never tried to please her. I do my work, and if she don't like it, she's got a tongue in her head. Did I ever tell you about her wanting me to dust the leaves on that little tree in front of the dining room window?
Dust the leaves?
That's the honest-to-goodness fact.
Can you imagine?
You know how I done it, don't you?
What'd you say to her?
I told her up and out I'd dust no tree for nobody.
Gee,
And she says, you mean you refuse to dust it? Yes, says I, and what's more, I mean stay refused. Well, says she, it needs dusting. Let it need it, says I, a little dust won't poison it. We'll all be dust ourselves someday unless we get drowned.
You done right.
Oh, I told her. But I'll say this for her. You won't get better pay or better food any place in town.
I guess not, but still and all, I think the worst kind of a woman a girl can work for is one that's crazy about her home.
You're right. They are crazy. But you know you can go crazy over a house, Maisie, the same as you can over anything else.
I went out with Berkmeyer
Where?
over to Fergus's house.
Well, why in heaven's name did you do that?
Well, why not?
Well, supposing someone had seen you, Walter.
Well, what if they had?
Well, you know, of course, the police are looking for you right now.
Who says so?
One of them has just left here.
A policeman?
Detective. He said he was from police headquarters.
Well, why did he come here?
Well, you were there last night, weren't you?
Did he say he knew I was at Passmore's last night?
But what he said exactly, I was too upset. You dashed off without a word to me, Walter. I was never placed in such a position in my life. I'm sure he thought I was lying.
I'll call police headquarters now. I plan to do it anyway.
No, don't do that, Walter. Let them come back again if they want to. You don't have to go looking for them.
Well, you can't play a game in a thing like this, Harriet.
No, and you don't need to go rushing to meet a lot of scandal either. Your name would be in every newspaper in the country.
That wouldn't bother me.
Wouldn't bother you?
Not in the least. My conscience is clear.
Well, if you had nothing to do with this thing, why get involved?
What do you mean, if I had nothing to do with it?
Don't start picking me up on every word, Walter. Walter? Here. Don't you want it?
Well, what good is it if I can't smoke it?
There are plenty of other places to smoke.
I don't know where they are. That fella say when he'd be back?
I don't remember. I suppose so. But Walter, if he does come back, tell him nothing. Do you understand? Let him question some of Fergus's other friends.
I'll call Berkmeyer and find out if they've been to see him.
Walter! Walter, now wait a minute. You're not going to do anything of the kind.
Why not?
Get away from this phone.
What's the matter with you?
Don't you realize this phone is being watched, and Berkmeyer's too?
Who's watching
The
them?
police. I happen to know the first thing they do is to watch the calls to and from the house.
Not from this
I
house.
mean from Fergus's house.
I wasn't going to call Fergus's house.
Well, Berkmeyer's then. What difference does it make?
Plenty.
Walter, do you think those detectives are fools? Berkmeyer called you last night at Passmore's house, didn't he?
How do you know?
Never mind. There's undoubtedly been a record of that call.
Why?
Because the operator listened in.
Why? Fergus was alive last night. Why should the operator have listened in on his
Well,
calls?
she listened in on this one, didn't she?
Which one? Which call did the operator listen in on?
I don't know. The fact remains that this phone is being watched now.
And I want to know why.
Walter Craig, you listen to me. You must not use that phone. I don't want my name dragged into this.
I'm going to find out where I stand in this thing.
If you speak over that phone, I'll leave this house.
What do you mean you'll leave this house?
I mean just that. You think I could stay in this neighborhood one day after my name had been linked in a scandal like this?
Harriet, try to understand my position. A waiting game will create suspicion, and there aren't any grounds.
There are grounds for suspicion.
What are they?
You were there last night.
And that means nothing.
Evidently not to
Does
you.
it to you?
What difference does it make what it means to me? It isn't for me to determine whether you're innocent or guilty. I'm not interested.
You are not interested?
I am interested only in the respect of the community we have to live in.
You mean you'd rather know I was involved in this thing and keep the respect of the community than know I was a victim of circumstances and lose it? Is that it?
What is it, Mrs. Harold?
Dinner is served, Mrs. Craig.
Thank you. We'll be right in.
Oh, Mrs. Harold.
Yes, sir?
Mrs. Harold, did anybody call that number I left here last night? Did anyone call that number from here today?
I know, Mr. Craig, not that I know of. I gave it to that gentleman last night.
Yes, but I mean today. You're Maisie didn't call that number today, did you?
I know, Mr. Craig.
All right, Mrs. Harold, thanks.
I never even thought of it today, sir, until Mrs. Craig found it laying there on the table when she come home.
All right, Mrs. Harold, thank you very much. You made that call. What were you doing? Checking up on me?
Don't flatter yourself, Walter.
Yes, that's exactly what you were doing.
The man isn't born that I'd bother checking up on.
Why didn't you tell the truth? You tried to make me think I was responsible for that detective's coming here. He was looking for you.
You needn't try to turn it on me, Walter. You wouldn't be looking for either of us if you stayed at home last night instead of being out playing cards with a person like Fergus Passmore. I might have known as soon as my back was turned you'd be out with your friends again.
My aunt said you'd driven all my friends away from this house, and I thought she was imagining things.
Now you think she was right, eh?
Yes, I think she was right. I think she was right about something else.
Really?
She said you were trying to get rid of me, too, without actually driving me out of the house. And I believe that's true, too.
Well, keep your voice down, please. Do you want everybody in the house to hear you?
You didn't want my friends here because their presence implied an importance to me. The idea has always been, hasn't it, to reduce me to one of those wife-ridden sheep that's afraid to buy a necktie for fear his wife might not like it?
Oh, don't play the martyr, Walter. You've had your share of the bargain.
I never regarded our marriage as a bargain. Until today, I didn't know you did.
Walter, did you expect me to go into something so important with my eyes shut?
I wanted you to go into it honestly. And you've been playing safe from the start.
I've done nothing of the kind.
Well, you'd gladly have me suspected of a double murder, so long as you were safe.
I've been trying to protect my home.
No, that's all I've heard from you since the day I married you.
What else has a woman but her home?
And she her husband?
She could lose her husband, couldn't she, as many another woman has?
Could she lose her home, too?
No. Not if she knew how to secure it.
That's the point in a nutshell, Harriet. If she knew how to fix it for herself.
Well, what if I have fixed things for myself? You haven't lost anything by it, have you? If I fixed them for myself, I fixed them for you, too. Your home is here. Perhaps if I hadn't kept the control of it in my hands, it wouldn't be here now. I saw what happened to my own mother. I made up my mind it would never happen to me. She was one of those I will follow thee, my husband women. Believed everything my father told her, and all the time he was mortgaging the house over her head for another woman. When she found it out, she did the only thing a woman like that can do. And that was to die of a broken heart.
I'm not reproaching you, Harriet.
You have nothing to reproach me for.
You simply married the wrong man.
I married a romantic fool. That's what I married. And I realize it more every day that I live.
How well we understand each other now, Harriet.
Well, I understand you all right. You ought to thank heaven that I do. I don't know what would become of you if I didn't.
The brass of you. And the presumption.
What?
What have you ever done, or a million others like you, that you dare assume such superiority over your husband?
Nobody's assuming any superiority.
You don't know what would become of me if you didn't understand.
Well, frankly, I don't.
The presumption of you.
Mrs. Craig. Mrs. Craig, the dinner will be spoiled.
Thank you, Mr.
To set yourself up to control the very destiny of a man. As though I were some
I'm going
mental
up to see what my
incompetence.
niece would have for her dinner. You'd better have your dinner before it gets cold.
Did anything get broke, Mr. Craig? Glory be to heaven this day and this night. However did it happen? Did it fall?
No, I smashed it.
On purpose, you mean, Mr. Craig?
Yes. I didn't like it.
Oh, I wish you'd tell her it was you that done it, Mr. Craig.
I'll tell her all about it, Mrs. Harold. Don't worry.
Shall I get a dustpan and sweep it up?
No, don't bother.
Are you down there, Walter?
Yes?
Did something fall down there a minute ago?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
It sounded up here as though the whole house fell down.
Maybe it did, Harriet. I'm just sitting here wondering.
morning, Mr. Craig.
Hello, Mrs. Harold. You got your paper there?
Yes, sir. Have you been sitting up all night, Mr. Craig?
Yes, I guess I dozed off.
You must be tired. Wouldn't you like a cup of coffee?
Yes, thanks.
Hey, buddy, will you be going back soon?
Yes, in a little while. Why?
Well, I'll wait for you. Things are kind of slow this time of day.
All right, suit yourself. I want to see Miss Landreth, Mr. Fredericks.
Well, I couldn't say if she's up yet or not, but I'll see.
Well, I'll wait if I may.
Come in, sir. Mr. Fredericks to see Miss Ethel, sir.
Oh, hello, Mr. Fredericks. I'm Ethel's uncle, Walter Craig.
How do you do, sir?
Don't you want some breakfast? I was just about to have some.
No, thank you, Mr. Craig. I'd like to see Ethel.
Well, come right in, sit down, wait for her. Have a chair there.
Yes?
Oh, Miss Ethel, I didn't know if you were up. The young gentleman said he'd wait.
What young gentleman?
He said Mr. Fredericks.
Oh.
Excuse me.
Jean, darling. Jean.
Certainly had me worried.
Jean. Jean, they didn't send for you from home, did they? Jean, his mother was.
No, dear, I just came down from college.
Oh, Jean, you're sure? Don't lie to me. If anything's happened, I'd rather know.
Why, no, darling. I haven't heard a word except that wire from you.
Hello, Uncle Walter. This is Jean Fredericks, my fiancée.
We've met. That breakfast offer is still open when you've had time to talk things over.
Thanks, Uncle Walter.
Yes?
A couple of trunks and some small stuff to go to New York. Whatever the name of Austin?
Oh, yes. Go around the side way. I'll open the door for you.
Okay, sis. Anything you say.
Oh, dearest, I've been so lonely and worried and mixed up.
How was your mother when you left?
I think she was better. Harriet kept telling me she was out of danger and we were only upsetting her. Oh, I know I shouldn't have left, but I was so tired, and Harriet... Well, the first thing I knew, I was on the train.
Dear, if you were so ill that she couldn't call you last night.
What do you mean?
Well, I phoned you last night about 6. Didn't your aunt tell you?
Jean, I'm going back with you right now just as quickly as I can get out of this house.
Ethel.
Oh, it's really quite awful when you know the whole story.
Well, I wish you'd tell me.
I will on the way back. I better say goodbye to her.
Well, I've got a few things I'd like to tell her myself.
No, you stay here.
Come in. The expressman is here, Miss Austin.
Oh, yes.
The trunk's all labeled and ready to go.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you spoken to Mrs. Craig?
No, I haven't, Miss Austin.
Well, I think you should, Mrs. Harold. There might be something she wanted to ask you.
Well, all right, I'll tell her.
Is Mr. Craig up?
Yes, he's down in the breakfast room.
Thank you, Mrs. Harold.
Who is it?
It's Ellen, Harry.
Oh, come in, dear. Did you sleep well?
I didn't sleep, Harriet.
Oh, I'm so sorry, dear.
I just came to say goodbye. I'm going home. Gene is here, and he's going with me as far as Albany.
Mr. Fredericks came down here?
Yes, he was worried about me. When you told him I couldn't come to the phone, why, naturally, he thought I was ill. Harriet, why did you do that?
What was the sense of upsetting you, dear?
Because it was important to me.
I asked him if it was important.
And you hung up on him.
Because he insisted on talking to you when you were in no condition to be talked to.
Well, why didn't you tell me this morning that he'd called?
Well, dear, I cannot answer any more questions about Mr. Fredericks. I had quite enough to worry me without thinking of Mr. Fredericks.
Harriet, is Uncle Walter leaving you?
What on earth gave you that idea?
Well, I couldn't help overhearing you and Uncle Walter last night. I couldn't sleep, and you were talking pretty loud. I thought maybe he'd found out.
Found out? Found out what?
About your plans. All those things you told me on the train that I said didn't seem honest.
Nonsense. Ethel, dear, will you open that door, please?
Jean is waiting for me, Harriet. I'll let you know right away if Mother's any better or
Do be
not.
careful, please. Oh, look what you've done.
I'm sorry, ma'am, but this baby got away from me.
Oh, you fool, you fool. Don't you know better than to drag a trunk across the floor like this? You'll have to lift it. Lift it. Pick it up.
Yes, ma'am.
Goodbye, dear.
Goodbye, Uncle Walter.
Goodbye, sir. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Well, there you are, Mrs. Craig.
I found your keys in Miss Austen's room, Mrs. Harold.
Yes, I put them there.
You're leaving, is that it?
Yes, Mrs. Craig, I'm going with Miss Austen.
Then you're leaving without giving any notice.
Well, you didn't give Maisie much notice last night, Mrs. Craig.
Where are you going with Miss Austen? I didn't know she planned to keep house.
She don't. We're going to the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in New York, and then we're going all around the world so that she can get the tickets.
Well, I hope when your world tour is over, you can find a place as easy and as well paid as this.
Don't worry about me, Mrs. Craig. Nobody belonging to me ever died in the poorhouse.
Walter? Walter! Will you come here a minute, please?
Yes?
What does the paper say about the Passmore thing?
You're safe.
Oh, so the bullets were from his gun. Murder and suicide. Well, if anybody ever had a good reason for doing a thing like that, it was Fergus Passmore.
You think so?
You know yourself how that woman behaved.
Yes, I know a lot about Adelaide. She fell in love with Fergus. Something went wrong. He failed her. She couldn't love him anymore, so she fell for another man.
Does that seem right to you?
No, it doesn't seem right. But I think I can understand it. There was one thing about Adelaide. She wrecked herself and Fergus because she loved somebody.
Oh, Walter, how did that ornament happen to fall?
It didn't fall.
What do you mean?
I mean, I smashed it. Picked it up, threw it down, and smashed it deliberately.
I don't believe you.
It's the truth. See those butts? Oh, I was quite a fellow around here for a couple of hours.
You must have been out of your mind.
Harriet, it's not the part for me. I can only play a romantic part.
Oh, Walter, what are you talking about?
I'm leaving the keys to the house in the garage.
Walter Craig, you aren't serious about leaving this
I
house.
thought you'd be glad. It's so practical.
Well, what's practical about leaving your wife and your home?
I haven't a wife to leave, for you neither loved me nor honored me.
You married me whether I did or not.
I never saw you until last night.
But you married me all the same.
And you married a house. I'll see to it that you have it. Always.
All this just because I kept my head last night and wouldn't let you phone and make fools of us all. You can thank me that your name isn't in every newspaper in this city this morning.
I can thank you for showing me what a fool I've been and how I can keep from making a fool of myself in the future. I can't stay here now, Harriet.
Walter, you're talking nonsense.
If I stayed, I couldn't help remembering how much I'd loved you, the plans I made for us and our future, and you bearing with me for the sake of your future. I couldn't stand it.
But Walter, I only
Harriet.
wanted to...
Why aren't you wise enough to know that you can't play a dishonest game indefinitely?
But I haven't played a dishonest game.
I think you have. I think you know you have. If this affair at Passmore's hadn't revealed you, something else would. So my going might as well be today as tomorrow. Goodbye, Harriet.
Telegram from Mrs. Walter Craig. Will you sign for it, please? Thank you.
Good morning, Mrs. Craig. Oh, I hope you'll forgive my walking in like this, but the door was open and no one answered the bell. I brought some roses for Miss Austen. She seemed to... like them so much, and I have so many. Thank you. If you'll just tell Miss Austen I left them. Thank you. Have you had some word about your sister this morning, Mrs. Craig? Your husband was telling me she was quite ill.
She died this morning at 6 o'clock.
I am so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I just had this telegram. I had no idea she was so ill. I wouldn't have left her there.
I do sympathize with you. I hope you'll tell me if there's anything I can do.
I don't think there's anything anyone can do. That anyone can do. Anybody can do. I'm all alone in the house now. I'm all alone here. So, if you wouldn't mind,